Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srimad-Bhagavatam. We're back in Radha Lane in Houston, Texas, with all the lovely conch shells of Maya, driving by every 4 or 5 times a day to remind us where not to go. And we're here, hunkered down, just next to Sri Sri Radha Nilamadhava Temple. And we've got new people coming, and we've got veterans still coming, and we're ready to hear. Let's read the prayer offered to the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we'll be reading tonight, by Sanatana Goswami. Srila Sanatana Goswami is the senior disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most recent appearance of Krishna personally, appearing 500 years ago. And he's very special avatar of Krishna because he is Chana. He's hidden. He hides himself with the identity of being a devotee of himself. And he teaches us how to be a devotee of God himself, to be a perfect devotee, by being a perfect devotee of himself. Okay, so this is called Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram. It is Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we're reading every night. And it is the literary incarnation of God, the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And Sanatana Goswami is glorifying this literary incarnation of God. It goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Doditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Savasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadagamad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadayin Adini Chochatakara Hanamun Chagadachin Mam Premna Rit Kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we reach the 3rd canto, 31st chapter, 20th verse. We're in the middle of a very intense description of life within the womb. And Kapila Dev, an incarnation of God who appeared many, many, many millions of years ago, is answering the questions of his mother, Devahuti. And he's now giving instructions of the, what's the name of the chapter?
The movements of the living entities.
The movements of the living entities. How the living entities move from one body, one place to another. And now we're in the womb. And only fortunate souls can do this. Only very fortunate souls who have attained enough piety that they can remember once their consciousness becomes manifest. The consciousness is always there, but the consciousness needs vents to come through and to perceive the world. Like a tree, or some stones have souls. The stones that grow, they have souls. So, but there's no senses to vent the consciousness. So therefore there's practically no feelings. There's no feeling of pain or pleasure. And there's machines now that scientists have made that can measure the reactions of plants, and they do have feelings. They can see and they can feel. That's how come some trees, big trees, they'll grow. If something that's in its way, they'll grow around it. Things like that. So anyway, now there's a soul in the human embryo it's discussing. And the human birth is very important because the senses of the human body give vent to the consciousness and allow it to perceive more and allow it to consider if things can be improved. Whereas the animals can't improve themselves. Maybe they can build a dam if they're a beaver or something like that, but in terms of getting together and deciding how they're going to make spiritual advancement, that's not for the animals, that's for the human beings. So here we go. The soul, a very special soul, is praying within the womb. He's come. We've already heard about how the soul is injected into the womb of the mother, and how the emulsifications form a pea, and then how the pea gradually grows, and all the apertures and all the parts of the body develop. These are things that are already confirmed by scientific examination, by different means of extending the senses to be able to see these things. So here we go, text 20. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Deva Maya, at once captures the newly born child, and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death, begins. Purport. As long as the child is within the womb of his mother, he is in a very precarious and horrible condition of life. But the benefit is that he revives pure consciousness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord and prays for deliverance. But once he is outside the abdomen, when a child is born, Maya, or the illusory energy, is so strong that he is immediately overpowered into considering his body to be his self. Maya means illusion, or that which is actually not. In the material world, everyone is identifying with his body. This false egoistic consciousness of I am this body at once develops after the child comes out of the womb. The mother and other relatives are awaiting the child, and as soon as he is born, the mother feeds him and everyone takes care of him. The living entity soon forgets his position and becomes entangled in bodily relationships. The entire material existence is entanglement in this bodily conception of life. Real knowledge means to develop the consciousness of I am not this body, I am spirit soul, an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Real knowledge entails renunciation or non-acceptance of this body as the self. By influence of Maya, the external energy, by the influence of Maya, the external energy, one forgets everything just after birth. Therefore the child is praying that he prefers to remain within the womb rather than come out. It is said that Shukadeva Goswami, on this consideration, remained for 16 years within the womb of his mother. He did not want to be entangled in false bodily identification. After cultivating such knowledge within the womb of his mother, he came out at the end of 16 years and immediately left home so that he might not be captured by the influence of Maya. The influence of Maya is also explained in Bhagavad Gita as insurmountable. But insurmountable Maya can be overcome simply by Krishna consciousness. That is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam taranti te. Whoever surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna can get out of this false conception of life. By the influence of Maya only, one forgets his eternal relationship with Krishna and identifies himself with the body and the byproducts of the body, namely wife, children, society, friendship, and love. Thus he becomes a victim of the influence of Maya, and his materialistic life of continued birth and death becomes still more stringent. Text 21. Therefore, without being agitated any more, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nations with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering the wombs of many mothers for repeated births and deaths. Purport. The miseries of material existence begin from the very day when the spirit soul takes shelter in the ovum and sperm of the mother and father. They continue after he is born from the womb, and then they are further prolonged. We do not know where the suffering ends. It does not end, however, by changing his body. The change of body is taking place at every moment, but that does not mean that we are improving from the fetal condition of life to a more comfortable condition. The best thing is, therefore, to develop Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated, Upasadita Vishnu Pada. This means realization of Krishna consciousness. One who is intelligent by the grace of the Lord and develops Krishna consciousness is successful in his life because simply by keeping himself in Krishna consciousness, he will be saved from the repetition of birth and death. The child prays that it is better to remain within the womb of darkness and be constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness than to get out and again fall a victim to the illusory energy. The illusory energy acts within the abdomen as well as outside the abdomen, but the trick is that one should remain Krishna conscious, and then the effect of such a horrible condition cannot act unfavorably upon him. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that one's intelligence is his friend, and the same intelligence can also be his enemy. Here also the same idea is repeated. Suridatmanaiva, friendly intelligence, absorption of intelligence in the personal service of Krishna, and full consciousness of Krishna, always are the path of self-realization and liberation. Without being unnecessarily agitated, if we take to the process of Krishna consciousness by constantly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the cycle of birth and death can be stopped for good. It may be questioned herein how the child can be fully Krishna conscious within the womb of the mother without any paraphernalia with which to execute Krishna consciousness. It is not necessary to arrange for paraphernalia to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The child wants to remain within the abdomen of his mother and at the same time wants to become free from the clutches of Maya. One does not need any material arrangement to cultivate Krishna consciousness. One can cultivate Krishna consciousness anywhere and everywhere, provided he can always think of Krishna. The Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, can be chanted even within the abdomen of one's mother. One can chant while sleeping, while working, while imprisoned in the womb, or while outside. This Krishna consciousness cannot be checked in any circumstance. The conclusion of the child's prayer is, let me remain in this condition. Although it is very miserable, it is better not to fall a victim to Maya again by going outside. Text 22. Lord Kapila continued, the 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb, but while he thus extols the Lord, the wind of that helps parturition propels him forth with his face turned downward so that he may be born. 23. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. Purport. The word krichtrena means with great difficulty. When the child comes out of the abdomen through the narrow passage, due to the pressure, where the breathing system due to the pressure there, the breathing system completely stops. And due to agony, the child loses his memory. Sometimes the trouble is so severe that the child comes out dead or almost dead. One can imagine what the pangs of birth are like. The child remains for 10 months in that horrible condition within the abdomen, and at the end of 10 months, he is forcibly pushed out. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord points out that a person who is serious about advancement in spiritual consciousness should always consider the 4 pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. The materialist advances in many ways, but he is unable to stop these 4 principles of suffering inherent in material existence. Text 20. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Purport. Is there a problem with the transmission?
Not anymore.
Oh, it was one thing, but something else is given to him, because no one knows his no one knows his actual demand. And he cannot refuse the undesirables given to him. Sometimes the child cries for the mother's breast, but because the nurse thinks that it is due to pain within his stomach that he is crying.
It's having glitches. It's going on and off.
We have to do something about this. It's very serious. There's no other place that it's this much trouble. Even in Govardhan it was better. We have to do something about this.
Can we get you a better signal by getting a better program?
Yeah. We have to decide what to do.
It's not the phone, it's a service.
Yeah, it's not the phone.
Internet.
It's the internet connection. It's
I know
the router. Huh?
I know what we can get you, but right now we're just going to have to...
We'll soldier along tonight, and then tomorrow we'll work and see if we can't get something better.
Since yesterday, Radhakrishna Prabhu was saying there's a problem with the internet.
Uh-huh.
This morning also he came by my home.
Yes, there was a problem in last night. I didn't have any internet.
Yeah, no internet.
Okay, Jayashree said it's normal now.
Okay. I'll go back a couple of sentences. This is very intense. We don't remember any of this, but when we hear it, then we it kind of jogs our memory. Okay. The atmosphere within the abdomen was not at all pleasing, but as far as the child's feeding was concerned, it was being properly done by the laws of nature. But upon coming out of the abdomen, the child falls into a different atmosphere. He wants to eat one thing, but something else is given to him, because no one knows his actual demand. And he cannot refuse the undesirables given to him. Sometimes the child cries for the mother's breast, but because the nurse thinks that it is due to pain within his stomach that he is crying, she supplies him some bitter medicine. The child does not want it, but he cannot refuse it. He is put into very awkward circumstances, and the suffering continues. Do me a favor. Sit on the chair. You'll be happier. Thank you. Thank you. Text 26. Translation. Laid down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. Purport. And all the parents are looking, oh, look how cute he is. Purport. It should be noted that the child is born crying and suffering. After birth, the same suffering continues and he cries. Because he is disturbed by the germs in his foul bed, which is contaminated by his urine and stool, the poor child continues to cry. He is unable to take any remedial measure for his relief. Text 27. In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as smaller worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. Purport. The word vigata jnanam, that this means that the spiritual knowledge which the child developed in the abdomen is already lost due to the spell of Maya. Owing to various types of disturbances and to being out of the abdomen, the child cannot remember what he was thinking of for his salvation. It is assumed that even if a person acquires some spiritually uplifting knowledge, circumstantially he is prone to forget it. Not only children, but also elder persons should be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances so that they may not forget their prime duty. Text 28. In this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering different kinds of distress, and attains boyhood. In boyhood, he also suffers pains over desires to get things, but that he can never achieve. And thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. Purport. From birth to the end of 5 years of age is called childhood. After 5 years to the end of the 15th year is called poganda. At 16 years of age, youth begins. The distresses of childhood are already explained, but when a child attains boyhood, he is enrolled in a school which he does not like. He wants to play, but he is forced to go to school and study and take responsibility for passing examinations. Another kind of distress is that he wants to get some things with which to play, but circumstances may be such that he is not able to attain them, and thus he becomes aggrieved and feels pain. In one word, he is unhappy. Even in his boyhood, just as he was unhappy in his childhood, what to speak of youth? Boys are apt to create so many artificial demands for playing, but when they do not attain satisfaction, they become furious with anger, and the result is suffering. Text 29. With the growths of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, verse 36, Arjuna inquired from Krishna about the cause of a living entity's lust, a living being's lust. It is said that a living entity is eternally and, as such, qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. Then what is the reason he falls prey to the material and commits to so many sinful activities by the influence of the material energy? In reply to this question, Lord Krishna said that it is lust which causes a living entity to glide down from his exalted position to the abominable condition of material existence. This lust circumstantially changes into anger. Both lust and anger stand on the platform of the mode of passion. Lust is actually the product of the mode of passion, and in the absence of satisfaction of lust, the same desire transforms into anger on the platform of ignorance. When ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of his degradation to the most abominable condition of hellish life. To raise oneself from hellish life to the highest position of spiritual understanding is to transform this lust into love of Krishna. Sri Narottam Das Thakur, a great acharya of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, said, Kama Krishna Karmarpane. Due to our lust, we want many things for our sense gratification, but the same lust can be transformed in a purified way so that we want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anger also can be utilized towards a person who is atheistic or is envious of the Personality of Godhead. As we have fallen into this material existence because of our lust and anger, the same two qualities can be utilized for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness. And one can elevate himself again to his former pure spiritual position. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna. That is actual renunciation. Text 30. By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. Purport. The expansion of ignorance is explained in this verse. The first ignorance is to identify one's material body, which is made of 5 elements, as the self. And the second is to accept something as one's own due to a bodily connection. In this way, ignorance expands. The living entity is eternal, but because of his accepting non-permanent things, misidentifying his interest, he is put into ignorance, and therefore he suffers material pangs. Text 31. For the sake of the body, which is the source of constant trouble to him, and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one has to work to satisfy Yajna or Vishnu. For any work done without the purpose of satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a cause of bondage. In the conditioned state, a living entity, accepting his body as himself, forgets his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and acts on the interest of his body. He takes his body as himself, his bodily expansions as his kinsmen, and the land from which his body is born is worshipable. In this way, he performs all sorts of misconceived activities which lead to his perpetual bondage in repetition of birth and death in various species. In modern civilization, the so-called social, national, and government leaders mislead people more and more under the bodily conception of life, with the result that all the leaders, with their followers, are gliding down to hellish conditions, birth after birth. An example is given in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Anda yatandar upaniyamana. When a blind man leads several other blind men, the result is that all of them fall down in a ditch. This is actually happening. There are many leaders to lead the ignorant people, public, but because every one of them is bewildered by the bodily conception of life, there is no peace and prosperity in human society. So-called yogis who perform various bodily feats are also in the same category as such ignorant people, because the Hatha Yoga system is especially recommended for persons who are grossly implicated in the bodily conception. The conclusion is that as long as one is fixed in the bodily conception, he has to suffer birth and death. Text 32. If, therefore, the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. Purport. It has been explained that the conditioned soul is put into the Anda Tamisra and Tamisra hellish conditions, and after suffering there, he gets a hellish body like the dogs or hogs. After several such births, he again comes into the form of a human being. How the human being is born is also described by Kapila Dev. The human being develops in the mother's abdomen and suffers there and comes out again. After all these sufferings, if he gets another chance in a human body and wastes his valuable time in the association of persons who are concerned with sexual life and palatable dishes, then naturally he again glides down to the same Anda Tamisra and Tamisra hells. Generally, people are concerned with the satisfaction of the tongue and the satisfaction of the genitals. That is material life. Material life means eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy, with no concern for understanding one's spiritual identity and the process of spiritual advancement. Since materialistic people are concerned with the tongue, belly, and genitals, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he must be careful about associating with such people. To associate with such materialistic men is to commit purposeful suicide in the human form of life. It is said, therefore, that an intelligent man should give up all undesirable association and should always mix with saintly persons. When he is in association with saintly persons, all his doubts about the spiritual expansion of life are eradicated, and he makes tangible progress on the path of spiritual understanding. It is also sometimes found that people are very much addicted to a particular type of religious faith. Hindus, Muslims, and Christians are faithful in their particular type of religion, and they go to the church, temple, or mosque, but unfortunately they cannot give up the association of persons who are too much addicted to sex life, and satisfaction of the palate. Here it is clearly said that one may officially be a very, very religious man, but if he associates with such persons, then he is sure to slide down to the darkest region of hell. Text 33. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, in all such opportunities. Purport. Those who are too addicted to sex life cannot understand the purpose of the absolute truth, nor can they be clean in their habits, not to mention showing mercy to others. They cannot remain grave, and they have no interest in the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is Krishna, or Vishnu, but those who are addicted to sex life cannot understand that their ultimate interest is Krishna consciousness. Such people have no sense of decency, and even in public streets or public parks they embrace each other just like cats and dogs and pass it off in the name of lovemaking. Such unfortunate creatures can never become materially prosperous. Behavior like that of cats and dogs keeps them in the position of cats and dogs. They cannot improve any material condition, not to speak of becoming famous. Such foolish persons may even make a show of so-called yoga, but they are unable to control the senses and mind. which is the real purpose of yoga practice. Such people have no opulence in their lives. In a word, they are very unfortunate. 2 words. Text 34. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. Purport. The restriction of association of such foolish persons is especially meant for those who are in the line of advancement in Krishna consciousness. Advancement in Krishna consciousness involves developing the qualities of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, intelligence, in spiritual knowledge, simplicity, material opulence, fame, forgiveness, and control of the mind and the senses. All these qualities are to be manifested with the progress of Krishna consciousness. But if one associates with a Shudra, a foolish person, who is like a dancing dog in the hand of a woman, then he cannot make any progress. Lord Chaitanya has advised that any person who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and who desires to pass beyond material nations must not associate himself with women or with persons interested in material enjoyment. For a person seeking advancement in Krishna consciousness, such association is more dangerous than suicide. Text 35. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. Purport. Attachment to women is so contaminating that one becomes attached to the condition of material life not only by the association of women, but by the contaminated association of persons who are too attached to them. There are many reasons for our conditional life in the material world, but the topmost of all such causes is the association of women, as will be confirmed in the following stanzas. In Kali Yuga, association with women is very strong. In every step of life, there is association with women. If a person goes to purchase something, the advertisements are full of pictures of women. The physiological attraction for women is very great, and therefore people are very slack in spiritual understanding. The Vedic civilization, being based on spiritual understanding, arranges association with women very cautiously. Out of the 4 social divisions, the members of the first order, namely Brahmacharya, the third order, Vanaprastha, and the fourth order, Sannyas, are strictly prohibited from female association. Only under one order, the householder, is there license to mix with women under restricted conditions. In other words, attraction for women's association is the cause of the material conditional life. And anyone interested in being freed from this conditional life must detach himself from the association of women. Text 36. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. Purport. Lord Brahma's being captivated by the charms of his daughter, and Lord Shiva's being captivated by the Mohini form of the Lord, are specific instances which instruct us that even great demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva, what to speak of the ordinary, conditioned soul, are captivated by the beauty of women. Therefore, everyone is advised that one should not freely mix even with one's daughter or with one's mother or with one's sister, because the senses are so strong of daughter, mother, or sister. It is best, therefore, to practice controlling the senses by performing bhakti yoga, engaging in the service of Madana Mohan. Lord Krishna's name is Madana Mohan, for he can subdue the god Cupid or lust. Only by engaging in the service of Madana Mohan can one curb the dictates of Madana Cupid. Otherwise, attempts to control the senses will fail. Text 37. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayana is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. Purport. The first living creature is Brahma himself, and from him were created sages like Marichi, who in their turn created Kashyapa Muni and others. And Kashyapa Muni and the Manus created different demigods and human beings, etc. But there is none among them who is not attracted by the spell of Maya in the form of woman. Throughout the entire material world, beginning from Brahma down to the small, insignificant creatures like the ant, everyone is attracted by sex life. That is the basic principle of this material world. Lord Brahma's being attracted by his daughter is the vivid example that no one is exempt from sexual attraction to woman. Woman, therefore, is the wonderful creation of Maya to keep the conditioned souls in shackles. Text 38. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. Purport. There are many instances in the history of the world of the great conquerors being captivated by the charms of a Cleopatra. One has to study the captivating potency of woman and man's attraction for that potency. From what source was this generated? According to the Vedanta Sutra, we can understand that everything is generated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is enunciated there, Janmad Yasya Yataha. This means that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Person Brahman, the Absolute Truth, is the source from whom everything emanates. The captivating power of woman and man's susceptibility to such attraction must also exist in the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual world, and must be represented by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The Lord is the Supreme Person, the Supreme Male. As a common male wants to be attracted by a female, that propensity similarly exists in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He wants to be attracted by the beautiful features of a woman. Now the question is, if he wants to be captivated by such womanly attraction, would he be attracted by any material woman? It is not possible. Even persons who are in this material existence can give up womanly attraction if they are attracted by the Supreme Brahman. Such was the case with Haridas Thakur. A beautiful prostitute tried to attract him in the dead of night, but since he was situated in devotional service, in transcendental love of Godhead, Haridas Thakur was not captivated. Rather, he turned the prostitute into a great devotee by his transcendental association. This material attraction, therefore, certainly cannot attract the Supreme Lord. When he wants to be attracted by a woman, he has to create such a woman from his own energy. That woman is Radharani. It is explained by the Goswamis that Radharani is the manifestation of the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Supreme Lord wants to derive transcendental pleasure, he has to create a woman from his internal potency. Thus, the tendency to be attracted by womanly beauty is natural because it exists in the spiritual world. In the material world, it is reflected pervertedly, and therefore, sorry, I switched again. In the material world, it is reflected pervertedly, and therefore, there are so many inebrieties. Instead of being attracted by material beauty, if one is accustomed to be attracted by the beauty of Radharani and Krishna, then the statement of Bhagavad Gita, Padam Drishtva Nivartate, holds true. When one is attracted by the beautiful beauty, by the transcendental beauty of Radha and Krishna, he is no longer attracted by material feminine beauty. This is the special significance of Radha-Krishna worship. That is testified to by Yamuna Acharya. He says, since I have become attracted by the beauty of Radha and Krishna, when there is attraction for a woman or a memory of sex life with a woman, I at once spit on it, and my face turns in disgust. When we are attracted by Madana Mohan and the beauty of Krishna and his consorts, then the shackles of conditional life, namely the beauty of material woman, cannot attract us. Text 39. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman, for a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway of hell for the advancing devotee. Purport. The culmination of yoga in full Krishna consciousness. The culmination of yoga is full Krishna consciousness. This is affirmed in Bhagavad Gita. A person who is always thinking of Krishna in devotion is the topmost of all yogis. And in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is also stated that when one becomes freed from material contamination by rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can at that time understand the science of God. Here the word pratilabdhatma labha occurs. Atma means self, and labha means gain. Generally, conditioned souls have lost their Atma or self, but those who are transcendentalists have realized the self. It is directed that such a self-realized soul who aspires to the topmost platform of yoga perfection should not associate with young women. In the modern age, however, there are so many rascals who recommend that while one has his genitals, he should enjoy women as much as he likes, and at the same time he can become a yogi. In no standard yoga system is the association of women accepted. It is clearly stated here that the association of women is the gateway to hellish life. The association of women is very much restricted in Vedic civilization. Out of the 4 divisions, the brahmachari, vanaprastha, and the sannyasi, 3 orders are strictly prohibited from the association of women. Only the grihastas or householders are given license to have an intimate relationship with a woman, and that relationship is also restricted for begetting nice children. If, however, one wants to stick to continued existence in the material world, he may indulge in female association unrestrictedly. So we're going to stop here. We've gone about an hour. And open it up for reflections. This is a very intense subject, and we need some reflection, we need some clarification, how to understand this without freaking out completely. Shall I start the ball rolling? Okay. See, the thing is that this material world is a dreamlike state. It's not unreal because it comes from Krishna, but it is unreal in the sense that all the forms are temporary. So when we hear, and by the way, although it is a fact that the physical form of the human female is the combined attractive features of all of the other forms in the world. Like it or not, that's the way it is. So the thing is that the female form is formed after the form of Radharani, and the male form is formed after the form of Krishna. So that's what's going on here. And we came here to enjoy each other. Sometimes as a male, sometimes as a female. Sometimes the male is attracted to the female is attracted to the male, and then the soul gets another body and the other opposite sex. Then they get attracted to the opposite sex again. Then they go to the opposite sex. Then they get accepted the subtle body. The subtle body takes the soul from one body to another. So within that subtle body is the memories of all these experiences we've had. And all these experiences we've had over millions and millions and millions of births, in some cases, they all are occurring within one breath of Mahavishnu, and one out-breath and in-breath. So what we think is a very horrible thing to say, oh, the form of the woman is Maya. Or, and we've had one of those many, many times, and so have you women, had male forms many, many, many times. And so we're so accustomed to being attracted to one another, and nowadays the subtle body is so confused. Prabhupada explained this to us. It's so confused, the subtle body, from going back and forth from male to female bodies. After some time, when it comes out, it gets confused. Am I a male or am I female? It looks both ways. It says, I don't really know. And then at some point it decides, it chooses. Do you realize this? And there's some Scandinavian countries now that there's a law that the child's able to decide what his gender is going to be up into 7 years old. And the parents are not allowed to change that, whatever the child thinks. This is Kali Yuga.
What kind of insanity is that?
It's about as insane as us thinking that we can enjoy in this material world.
Lets a 7-year-old child decide what they're going to do?
Yeah. Well, it's they get in the ratings, you know, as the most what is the word? The best standard of living in the world is Scandinavia. You know, a lot of the times, Switzerland and Austria and Scandinavia and these countries. But the point is this. Here's the catch. The reason it's like that is because Krishna knows that we can't be happy without him. Whether we're in a male body or female body, we can't be happy. So he's created the material world in such a way as we can realize that we don't belong here because of this constant, you know, pressures and attractions and sufferings that go on from the womb. Now we've gone from the womb, now we've gone to the bodies of a male or female, and now the Bhagavatam is very kindly explaining to us how not to become so attached to it. I mean, we have married people in the room here. If you become disgusted with your wife, that's not very good. Or the wife becomes disgusted with the husband because it's material form, that's not very good. You can't do that. If you try to do that artificially, then you'll just fall down. You become debauched and you become crazy. So the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is tailored to help you remember constantly that actually we don't belong here. And we should do our duties as male and females in the material world, socially and culturally, but develop by this knowledge detachment from it. Not that we become so carried away with it that we can't remember, that we can't hear these truths. That we're not the body, that the body's going to change. The male or the female that we're attached to now is going to go. And we've got it all in our mind that this is it, this is my soulmate, this is my eternal love. You know, all the movies are about it, you know, at the end, you know, when there's some big crisis or this, at the end, it's the boy and girl get together and now everything's okay, you know. And then they leave each other, you know, at the end of life. And the more attached you get to it, then when the person leaves, then you suffer more. So the purpose of the detachment is not to make you suffer more, it's meant to help you to suffer less, so that you can fix your mind at the time of death on the spiritual body, the spiritual form, and the spiritual life. Because in the spiritual world there are also male and female bodies, but they're not attached in the same way that we are. But they're there, and there's real happiness, and the forms don't change. We can have eternal relationships with one another in the spiritual world, but not in the degraded way that we have them here. All the senses of the soul, because in the material world, in the spiritual world, we don't have it's not the body of in the spiritual world is not an embodied form. The soul is not inside the body, and the body is not causing the soul to forget who they are. The body and the soul are the same. The spiritual form in the body of a male or a female, which is neither male nor female, maybe one or maybe the other in the spiritual world, but here it's neither. This is the way it's constructed. Then, when the soul at the end of the body remembers Krishna, then the soul gets transferred to the spiritual world and finds out, or we can also find out before we leave the body. That's better. But even if not, if we are sincere and we take up Krishna consciousness, try our best sincerely, then Krishna will help us. This is what Prabhupada promised us. If we chant our 16 rounds, follow the regulative principles for the rest of this life, then we'll go back to Godhead. And that can only happen under such simple conditions if Krishna is pleased. So Srila Prabhupada is so dear to Krishna that when he makes a promise like that, Krishna takes it as like an order that he's got to do that. So at the end of our lives, if we chant 16 rounds every day and follow the regular principles as given in the Shastra, in the scriptures, then we'll go back to Godhead in this life. And if we're unfortunate enough not to be able to think of Krishna, he will force himself into our minds and our hearts. That's the science of Krishna consciousness. Yes, Hannah? From the cyber world.
Alright, this question is from Mayapur Shashi.
Mayapur Shashi from Taiwan. Haribol Mayapur.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada and your dear self. Happy New Year. Gurudev, would it be fair to refer to the dangers for women to be attracted to men equally to be the dangers for men being attracted to women? Or indeed, in this day and age, any permutation of the sexes? Or is this a clear distinction regarding the qualities of women? Your humble servant, Mayapur Shashi Das. I kind of know the answer.
Well, it is true that things change over time, and now everyone's so confused. Sometimes the devotees are confused how to answer this question, you know. But the fact is that the act of sexual intercourse causes a greater attachment to the body. This is one thing that we have to keep in mind. So in the natural order of things, now things are not natural. So you may make an argument that we can make, say it in a different way so that women don't feel like they're the source of Maya and the men can think otherwise or whatever. But the fact is that only until very, very recently, when you get off an airplane and you go into one of these modern airports, what's the first thing that they show you? They show you, liquor advertisements and advertisements for cosmetics. And they have these huge photos of women scantily dressed nowadays. Before it wasn't so, but now it's scantily dressed, giving all these kind of sensual kind of postures and suggestive things. And very, very seldom, they do have now men doing that. But the general, if they sell a car, and what do they have in the car on the mall? There's a scantily clad, beautiful, formed woman. Because it's just a fact that the female form is more attractive than the male. However you cut it, that's the way it is. And therefore the male dogs are after the female dogs, and the male peacocks are after the female peacocks, etc. In some species the male is dressed up more and everything, but the basic process is the same everywhere. So I think that it may be true that out of mundane sentiment or out of practicality, as you put it, Mayapur, Shashi Prabhu, it may be good to remind them that yes, the man is attractive to the woman also, and therefore for the woman the man is Maya. But Prabhupada and the Vedas say it like this because it's the reality that the woman's form is more attractive, essentially. It's the nature, you can't change it, that's the way it is. And even they're trying now. They're having body changes, and now the problem is fertility, you get a sex change, you're trans or whatever you are, and now there's a problem making them trans, and then they're in jail, then who's going to pay for the operation? Is it the public? If it's a public institution, are the public going to pay for that? Or Now in UK it's like even heavier, because there it's NHS, it's a national health system, which means everybody gets kind of like the opportunity, at least for healthcare, which is a superior system actually. I mean, maybe it's not as high tech. It is pretty high tech. I've been there. I've been treated by there. It's very high tech. But anyway, there are problems. There are problems everywhere. But so that's the answer. The answer is we can't change the scriptures that come from the spiritual world and make it different. We're trying to change. That's why everything's getting more and more complex and more confusing. I hope I answered the question to a certain extent. Hare Krishna. We have someone asking questions.
Was this whole information that you just addressed as far as the women being more superior?
Not superior.
Not superior.
Not superior. More attractive.
More attractive. Is this today's,
More sensually attractive.
Is this today's society?
Every society.
In the beginning of time?
In the history of time. For the history of time.
The reason why I ask, men, before I've read in different articles, were valued 10 times more than a woman since in the beginning of time.
No, that's not true. It's a matter of psychology, but in the Vedic culture, the women are considered more valuable. They're considered superior. We're not talking about superiority or inferiority here. We're talking about the physical attraction, how attractive one form is than the other. Female form is more attractive. But it's also, no, it's always been like this.
Okay.
You know, the female form is softer and more curvaceous and more capable of giving pleasure and nourishment and satisfaction. That's the nature, the female nature, and it's always been like that. And in the spiritual world, it's the same. But in the spiritual world, because God is in the center, Radha and Krishna are in the center, and we're all trying to help them enjoy, rather than us trying to enjoy, as imitators of Radha and Krishna. Therefore, there's different laws of nature in the spiritual world than here in the material world. The point of it all is that in the material world, whether you're a male or a female, if you become attached to one or the other, then you have to come back into this material world and do the whole thing again. And that's why before it talks about this, it talks about life in the womb and what it's like. We've got this romantic idea that the baby it's a miracle, and it is a miracle. The process of creation is a miracle. But the process of the whole creation of the whole external body of the universe, the external body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the whole universe, what a miracle that is. It's the same process, only it's happening on a universal scale. But it's the same process everywhere. The laws of nature are the same. You can't change the laws of nature. Now, they have technology that can sometimes predict when there's going to be an earthquake, or when there's going to be, and sometimes not. But sometimes they can predict when a hurricane's coming. And what can they do? They can give the people a little few more minutes to get out of town. But they can't stop the hurricane. And they never will be able to stop the hurricane. There have been forest fires since the beginning of creation, etc., etc. Sangsara dava nala lida loka trinaya karanya gana gana tvam. You know, the forest fire of material existence can only be put out by the rain of mercy from the spiritual master, or in the material sense, by the clouds pouring water, on the forest fire. That's the only way it can be put out completely. And we find out this year in California just how true that is. The whole towns are burning down. And all of these things are a reaction to the human beings rebelling against the laws of nature rather than agreeing to follow the laws of nature and having their relationships, male and female, and social and whatever, according to those laws. Not unrestricted, without care, without... what happens is when we have unrestricted sensual activity, the tendency for the finer qualities of the soul, or the spiritual qualities of the soul, to come forward. And greed and lust and anger, these are the three gates that lead to this condition. And then what happens? We become callous to the feelings of others. We only care about our own sensual gratification. And when the person doesn't gratify our senses sensually, we leave them, whether they be male or female. And therefore the whole human society now is in chaos. There's no more spiritual culture. There's no more, care for the children. There's no more a sense of spiritually educating the children so that they can be good. There's no more sense of having sexual intercourse for the purpose of bringing in a child to the world that will be good, that will be religious and pious and of moral and spiritual standing, that the combination will cause a spiritual atmosphere. And it was more like that in the beginning of the creation. You're hinting at this idea. It was more like that in the beginning of the creation, before the lust became stronger and stronger from passion to ignorance until what it is now in the Kali Yuga. But the point is that in this age we're living in now, we need special mercy, we need special concessions, because if we were called on to perfect ourselves in the ways of the original spiritual practices in beginning, meditation and long durations of life and strict principles, we couldn't do it. We're so fallen. But we can chant the holy names of Krishna. So even though these things are all there in the Bhagavatam and other scriptures, when Lord Chaitanya comes, he gives these huge concessions for the Kali Yuga. One of them is that if we have sinful thoughts in our minds, but we don't carry them out in our words and our actions, then we're not held responsible. But in previous ages, even if you think it, you're held responsible. And if we were held responsible for every thought that we had that was bad, Hare Krishna, there would be no hope for our salvation in this life. So rather than think, what a horrible thing that's happened, and why this can have to be true, and hate each other, and that's what's happening. That's what's happening. The male and females, they're hating each other because they can't get together anymore. They can't, be happy together because they're not agreeing to follow their nature, their natural, their natures that are given to them by the material nature. They want to rebel against that nature. The men want to be more like women. The women want to be more like men, and the whole situation is chaotic. So these are the laws that are given by the Bhagavatam that can set the standard, set the tone, of relationships in the material world, so that we can be satisfied, being in a female body or a male body, the female body being weaker and needing protection and needing to be pure, because from the womb of the pure woman comes the pure person, the good souls. And from the womb of women who are not controlled and who do not care about the children, who are willing to kill the child within the womb and still be able to have that sensual gratification that comes from sex. Because the genitals of both the male and the female are coated with a substance at birth. That's the nature, the material nature. that gives a pleasure so intense that they can't give it up unless they have higher spiritual knowledge and understanding, and to have a higher taste from that spiritual knowledge and understanding. If they can see the temporariness of material forms and know that we're not the body, we shouldn't be attached to being a male or a female because we're not the body. We have a spiritual identity in the spiritual world. We don't know what it is. We don't know who we are. That's a fact.
We shouldn't be attached to being male or female.
That's right. But we should be attached to following the rules, the laws of nature, which govern the activities of male and female. It doesn't mean that we become less free. This is the key, this is the trick of Maya. We think that if we're restricted, then we're less free. Because we're thinking we're the body. So we're thinking unless we can do what we want to do, whenever we want, even though we're not free. Why do they call it the law of nature? Why do they call it the urge of nature? Why do they call it the call of nature? When nature calls, who can say no? Anyone? Even in a Wimbledon court or U.S., if the tennis players got to go to the bathroom, they have to go. They stop the thing, and they go, and then they come back, and then that's it, and they start again. No one cannot answer the call of nature.
Except pujaris.
And even, no.
They can hold it.
They can hold it, but they cannot not answer the call of nature. To hold it doesn't mean you don't answer the call of nature. Just put it off for a few minutes, that's all. That's the law, that's the rule. But it's there for a reason. To show us you're not in control. And no matter how sophisticated you make your material culture, you cannot avoid the laws of nature. You cannot make a body that's going to stay here forever. It is not possible. Oh, but we're just look at how much we've learned now, and we just keep learning for 1 million more years, and then we will figure it out. Well, but where will you be? Disney was so dumb that he had his body frozen. Did you know that? Somewhere in the world, Walt Disney's body is frozen, and the material doctors promised him that when they get the cure for the disease that he had, I don't even know what it was, that we'll unfreeze you and inject you with this, whatever it is, and then you'll be okay and you can live longer. He said, okay. And not only that, he had to pay them a fortune to do that.
I bet he's still paying a fortune from his
Yes.
Disney parks.
Exactly.
Imagine how much money and electricity to keep that thing frozen.
Yeah, exactly.
Never going to Disney World again.
So it's like, this knowledge is like, if a person's intoxicated and you put a bucket of ice water over his head, you kind of ruin his fun, in a sense, but it sobers him up, And nobody likes to be intoxicated all the time. That's why they have what is called a hangover. Well, this whole material world is intoxicating. And the hangover means one lifetime to another, not just one night to one day, or one night to one morning. And that's what's going on. That's the reality. So this knowledge in the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, it's like a ice cold bath, that wakes us up, sobers us up, and reminds us of why we're here and what the goal is. And if you don't accept it, fine. You're in the material world, you got a little bit of independence, but it's not complete independence. And unless you accept it, you'll just have to have another body and go through the whole thing again until you finally wake up and realize that this process of just having sex and intoxicating yourself and, eating other, bodies and taking a chance, and winning the jackpot. When I was a kid, they had a television program. It was called The Millionaire. And it was about a philanthropist who just watched people. He was very rich. He just watched people, and he would pick somebody out at random, and he'd give $1 million. In those days, $1 million was a lot of money like more than 10, 100 million now.
Even though, I don't want to say.
No, but it's nothing compared to what it was then. And then he would watch as their life unraveled. And they became completely suffering.
What?
Yeah.
It's an awesome show.
Yeah. It was good.
They should put like Bhagavad Gita at the end of it and be a charity.
Or they could, do a rerun or something. Anyway, okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's after 8 o'clock. I'm still jet lagged, although it may not appear like it, but I am. So I'm going to try to get a full night's sleep tonight and then start up tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you, Maya Purshashi, for that fantastic question that led to that deep talk, explanation. It's by your mercy. And that's it. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. We'll see you tomorrow night, same time, same station. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai.